with arts. So give a long clap while she settles that mic in, and we will welcome her into it.
It was 1994, and I was in my second last year of high school. Mrs. Buber's art class, Riverside High. Oh boy. If you could have seen inside my head that day, you would have seen me willing the ground to crack open and swallow me whole. I was facing my worst nightmare: public humiliation in front of my friends and peers. I was quite a timid young girl. And Mrs. Buber was a passionate and eccentric woman. She often had brightly coloured, creatively styled hair. She wore big earrings, long earrings, different earrings in each ear. She had a pair of glasses to match every outfit for every day of the week. She even came to school one day with a different shoe on each foot. She said that was accidental, and I did believe her. She drove a V-dub little Beetle that had been hand-painted by us students in bright colours of little men. We loved her, but oh boy, we knew that if our homework assignments did not meet that high level of expectation, it was like the wrath of God was coming down on you. And that day I knew I had fallen short. The day before Sunday, I sat in my bedroom, my paints and my paper laid out before me. The assignment was to paint or draw for a minimum of 6 hours a self-portrait. Of course, we had the whole week to do that. I left it till Sunday morning. The last thing I felt like doing was sitting and studying myself, looking at myself in a mirror. I didn't even like that person. And now I had to focus on her. My music was loud, it was angry, it was rebellious. I can remember those feelings. Something snapped, and I put the paint on my hands and I painted out this portrait. It took only a couple of minutes. And I sat back and I looked at my portrait. And I actually quite liked what I had produced. And this feeling of calm came over me. That same feeling of calm did not follow me that day into the classroom, if only it did. As I sat there, awaiting my judgment. Mrs. Buber's classroom every now and again had the smell of her recently extinguished long brown skinny cigar. That morning, there was no smell in the air. And when she looked down at my portrait, there was a change in the air. There was a light that came on in her eyes, and I cannot remember exactly what she said that day. But she said to me that I had painted something that could be felt, and that was art. And she took my portrait and she raced down the corridor to show the teacher next door. If you look back inside that young girl's head, you would have seen me doing somersaults with jubilation. I was so privately, silently happy with her response. That painting travelled around South Africa. I call it my mad self-portrait. Underneath I wrote the words, "In this cell of flesh and bone are two. The one is mad, the other me." I didn't go on to study art when I finished school. I didn't ever think that I could have a successful career as an artist. I mean, the artists we learnt about were all impoverished, and as a young girl, that certainly wasn't something I aspired to. But the dream became to be a successful artist. I got married, and life continued. And in between and after hours, working typical day jobs, I'd knock on gallery doors. And I'd submit my work to exhibitions, and time again, I'd receive that response of rejection. My work just wasn't good enough back then. I mean, let's face it, I was just out of school and, years on. Moments like I had that day in my bedroom were seldom, only happened sporadically. And those moments when they happened were like gold. But over time, my bruised ego would heal because I'd vowed time and time again to never pick up a paintbrush again. And my pot filled of emotions, my happy, my sad, my joyous, my mad, the whole range would begin to bubble again. And I'd find myself running to my paint because it was safe to outpour those emotions in that place. It wasn't until later in my 30s that I hit one of life's crossroads. But this wasn't a crossroad. This was a dead end. You see, I came home from work after just being in a horrible meeting where for a while I was on the receiving end of a workplace bully. And my once happy-go-lucky, although going nowhere but enjoyable job, that changed. And that meant it was time for me to take stock. I got home and I looked at where my art career was going. Because all of those years of knocking on those gallery doors had eventually started to pay off. And for the last couple of years, I was actually making a reasonable living as an artist. In fact, I was even using up most of my annual leave to work towards national exhibitions and use up my leave to participate in them. And it was right there and then that I realized that the only person holding me back from this idea of being a successful artist was me. I was already one. And I put my stake in the ground and I announced to nobody else but myself that I am an artist deserving of that title, and I wrote my resignation letter. Nowadays, I walk into the studio, I paint almost every day. And just like I did that day, that Sunday morning, I put my music on. I make sure that my music reflects how I'm feeling. And I go on to load my brush with those feelings. Because I've realized that just like an umbilical cord that feeds an unborn child, so too does my art become that invisible cord that feeds me. It feeds and nourishes, maintains and sustains my own emotional well-being. It's food for my soul. And when it goes on, when my work goes on to live in the homes of the people that fall in love with it, it is that umbilical cord for them as well, because it connects them back to whatever memories called out to them in that painting. And not just the memories, but it makes them feel. It makes them feel the exact feeling I painted.